Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing a little bit more of like a chatty kind of video. In my first video back to BookTube, my 2021 goals and resolutions video, I talked about how I realized how BookTube was influencing me both consciously and unconsciously, and by taking a step back and stopping making videos for about 6 months, I was kind of able to hit the reset button on my reading life, which has been really nice. So during that time, I feel like I learned a lot of things about my reading, and I thought it would be helpful to other people if I made a video talking about some of the things that I learned during that break, and also potentially help people that might be feeling the same kinds of things that I was feeling. And it'll also probably give you an indicator of the kind of content that you're going to see on my channel going forward, which isn't to say that my content is going to be like drastically different than it was beforehand, because it's still going to like primarily be books, but there definitely has been a shift in the kind of books that I've been enjoying. So that brings me to point number 1. I've been majorly struggling with YA books recently, YA fantasy in particular. I don't know that I've actually tried to read much YA contemporary recently, but any of the YA fantasy that I have read, it's just not like resonating with me in the way that it used to, which makes me really sad because it was always one of my favorite genres. There are really like a handful of YA fantasy series that mean so much to me, and I feel like I go into a lot of new series with the expectation of finding a potential new favorite, which is maybe not the best way to frame it when they seem to be so few and far between. There could be a number of reasons why I'm feeling this way. You know, it could be that I am just getting older and that's why it's not resonating with me as much. I've also gotten really invested in a bunch of adult fantasy series, which I find to be a lot longer and a lot more character driven and typically have a much slower pace, which is what I really like in books. So in that sense, I do feel like my reading has changed there. I was actually looking at my spreadsheet from 2020 of all of the books that I read, and when I stopped making YouTube videos in July, after that point, I only picked up one YA book for the rest of the year. Like, the rest of everything that I read were adult books. I've noticed this month too. I did pick up 2 YA fantasy books this month with the hope that I would really enjoy them, and I didn't really love either of them, which you guys will see in my wrap up. However, I've also been reading some adult books and nonfiction books, and those have been just excellent. So I'm probably going to be reading less YA overall because it's just not doing it for me. So that's number 1, and actually segues very nicely into point number 2. I really love nonfiction. I used to read a lot of nonfiction when I was younger, but once I started doing BookTube, I like completely stopped reading nonfiction altogether. And I think it's because when I first started BookTube, I felt like there were all of these books that I had to like catch up on reading and had to have had read in order to be a good BookTuber and to know like the books that everyone is talking about. I feel like that was really more of like an unconscious pressure, and it was one of those things that I put on myself that wasn't like a, you know, BookTube pressure. It was like a me pressure. But anyway, it resulted in me not having the time to read any nonfiction, and I just feel like I've been reading so much nonfiction since the summer. I've really enjoyed the vast majority of it. I've learned a lot more than I have in so many years. Like, I'm getting a lot out of the books that I'm picking up now, even to the point where like I'll be reading something and then I'm like, I need to go delve deeper online and do more research about this topic because it's fascinating and I need to know like all of the things, which isn't really the way that I used to read. It was the way that I used to read, and then when I started doing BookTube, I kind of stopped because I was more in the habit of, okay, gotta read this book, gotta finish this book, gotta get to the next book so that I have a lot of books to talk about at the end of the month. I've definitely realized there's that whole quality over quantity thing. That's kind of been a gradual realization for me. Anyway, I'm really excited to be indulging in some nonfiction reads again. I hope that maybe I'll expose you guys to some books that maybe you haven't heard of or just aren't really spoken about as much on BookTube, since it does tend to skew more YA when it comes to big booktubers. Point number 3 is that backlist books are great. Not a revolutionary statement, I know. So this kind of goes in tandem with my last point, but over my break, I did not feel the need to pick up every single new release and like have read and reviewed it, because I wasn't reviewing before the release date or like shortly after the release date. I've actually found that I kind of enjoy reading more backlist books, and I enjoy waiting a little while until either hype dies down or until I have some friends who have read certain things that read a lot faster than me that can tell me if I'll like something or not. Like Alexa from Alexa Loves Books. She reads so fast, and she also is a really good indicator of whether I'll enjoy something or not. Like she knows what I like in books. She'll be able to objectively tell me whether I will like it or not, which is really helpful. Speaking of Alexa Loves Books, in her last video, she was also wearing the same sweater. I saw her wear it in an Instagram photo, and I was like, Alexa, I need your sweater. So she told me where she got it, and I immediately ordered one for myself. But anyway, so back to the backlist books topic. I found that I picked up whatever I was in the mood for instead of whatever I kind of felt a subconscious pressure to read in that moment. Definitely made for a lot more enjoyable of a reading experience overall. One of the reasons why this is also a big thing is because I have been trying so hard to break the habit of buying so many books, and I've been doing a good job of that for the past couple of months. I have a new challenge that goes with that this year, which was in my goals video. That means that I have to be so selective about the books that I am choosing to purchase, because there's only so many slots that I have per month, and I really need to like make sure that it's going to be something that I really want to read, really want to own, maybe isn't available from my library, or maybe I've already listened to it or read it from my library and now I loved it, so I want a physical copy. I'm not like just buying anything that sounds the slightest bit interesting to me anymore. That has also led me to read a lot of the books that I pick up a lot sooner than I used to. So like I still have books sitting on my shelves from years ago that I haven't read, but I found that in the past couple of months, I tend to read the books that I haul that month like very quickly after acquiring them. My next point is DNFing is a good thing. This was probably the biggest revelation that I had over my break. I always knew in theory that DNFing was a good thing. I encourage other people to DNF books if they're not enjoying them, but I myself have always struggled with DNFing books. However, I was ruthless over my break. If I was not invested in something, I put it down. It was so nice. So I was really good about knowing in theory that it was good, but not so good about it in practice. Two of the like big reasons why that is because first of all, I always felt like if I was reading something, I didn't want to put it down right before it was going to get good. I didn't want to just miss the really good thing that was going to turn everything around for me, but I have come to realize that if I'm not invested in characters, chances are there's not going to be anything that's really going to change my mind. And then the second reason, which is definitely a bad reason, if I feel like I've already invested X amount of time in a book and there's only so much of it left, I'm usually like, well, I may as well just finish it to have another book read, which again, that is not a good mindset to have. So yeah, I've been DNFing, and it's been really liberating to just put down something that I don't feel invested in and then pick up something that I am enjoying and read that instead. It's resulted in me spending my time a lot better than I have in the past. I know that I am still struggling with this a little bit, especially now with my like return to BookTube. There was a book that I read in January that by all accounts I should have DNF'd. I wasn't that interested in it. It took me a really long time to read and it shouldn't have, but I was like, it's a new release. I gotta do it. I gotta power through. And in retrospect, that was not a good choice. And I'm going to be more conscious of not doing that in the future. Even while I was doing it, I was like, I recognize that I should DNF this, but I just, didn't. It's really good to say no to publishers about certain things. I'm obviously super grateful for any opportunity that I get to read and review a book early. However, BookTube is not a job for me. BookTube is something that I do because it is fun and because I enjoy reading, and I don't need to put extra pressure on myself to do things when I do have a full-time job that I need to worry about, which has kind of blended into like an all-the-time job because I'm home, so there's no like separation from work and office, and I just don't need extra things on my plate at this point. I feel like reading is something that brings me joy, and when there is something that has strings attached, it like never works as well for me. It's just my personality. Like if there's like a book that I really want to read and then somebody is like, you have to read this book because of X reason and you have to do this by this date and this by this date, it just makes me not want to do it, and then I'm not excited for it, and that's bad. And it definitely affects my opinion of a book too. I like having no strings attached, no expectations. I want to just read the way that I want to read. Just to give you a little bit of insight, one publisher that I think does things really well is Random House when it comes to like influencers. They send around an email at the end of every month. They let us choose, like, it depends on the month, but between like 4 and 6 titles. And it's actually the one that I'm like part of is all adult books, which has been really nice. But I like that you have the choice of how many books that you want, because there are other publishers that will send you like a box of books, and sometimes you'll only be interested in like one title. And I've put it into practice a long time ago now that I do not accept big boxes of books. I don't think it's fair to the author, because those should go to somebody who is excited to read them and is going to talk about them. I don't think it's fair to me because it's extra work. And I also don't think that it's very good for the environment. And it's also challenging because then I need to figure out how to get rid of it, whether I'm going to be giving it to a family or a friend or donating it. I will tell you right now, I'm the worst person ever when it comes to going to the post office. I like do not go to the post office. I am not good at mailing things to other people. I had to go into my physical office the other day, and I realized that I still have a book in my desk drawer for Jane from It's Jane Lindsay that I was supposed to mail to her over a year ago. I think I promised it to her in like December of 2019, and goes to show you that I'm not good at mailing things out. I would much rather just get the things that I want, and like that's it. And if that means purchasing my own book as opposed to accepting a box of books, I'm much happier to do that. I hope that that didn't come across as ungrateful at all, because I really am thankful for the publishers who do decide to work with me, especially on titles that I'm very interested in. But I did discover in my time off that it's important to me to have clearer boundaries and to really stick to what it is that I'm interested in versus what people are pitching to me. And that also ties in with my next point, which is being really selective about arcs. At this point, I'm really only accepting arcs that are like the kind of books that I would drop everything to read immediately. I definitely used to be guilty of accepting books that sounded interesting to me, but maybe I wasn't going to read them like immediately. If a publisher emails me about a book, I'm very good about saying like, thank you for thinking of me, but I don't need that book. But if you go to a place like Book Expo, a lot of times people are kind of pushing books on you because they also don't want to be responsible for having to ship or carry all of the books back to their office once Book Expo is over. Publishers, obviously, and publicists, their entire job is to make books sound appealing to us. Instead of listening as much as I have in the past, I need to like follow my own intuition and be like, this isn't something that was on my radar. This isn't something that I want to read right now. I can purchase it when it comes out, or I can borrow it from my library if I want to read it in the future, but there's no reason to take it now and have it take up space when I could have the other books that I would prefer to read. It honestly just makes me feel so guilty to see like any arcs on my TBR cart, because there are books that I want to read, and then if I see a book like glaring at me that's like, I come out soon, I'm like, okay, I guess I should read you, but I really want to read this other book. And then I just feel guilty, and I don't want to feel guilty or bad about anything when it comes to reading, because it's supposed to be a joyful experience. The next thing I learned is the beauty of unhauling. Unhauling has become such a regular practice for me, and it's really been excellent. So I mentioned in my bookshelf tour video that I unhauled 476 books in the year of 2020, which is a lot of books. I've been so good about weeding through my shelves, getting rid of things that I've had for a really long time that I don't think I'm going to get to, getting rid of things that were sent to me unsolicited. You can tell people that you don't want to receive unsolicited books, but it doesn't matter, like you still get them. Living in a New York City apartment, do not have the kind of space to keep every single book, and nor do I want to keep every single book. I want my bookshelves to be a reflection of the things that I've read and really loved, and things that have had an impact on me, and stories that have really resonated with me. And actually, funnily enough, so when I was editing my bookshelf tour video that I posted, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm seeing more things that I can get rid of, and like some series where I have multiple copies of them, and I really just don't need those multiple copies. So I'm definitely going to be doing another go around on my shelves very soon. I've gotten really good about reading a book, and then if I don't like the book or if I like the book but know that I'm never going to revisit it, I've been excellent about giving it to a friend or a family member or donating it. I do think that this will change slightly for me with doing YouTube again, because I know that I'm going to want to keep books that I will eventually unhaul, at least until I film a wrap-up video. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement like a new system where I just make a little pile of monthly unhauls, and then that way I'll have it to the side. I can take it to film my wrap up, and then I can get rid of that pile once I finish filming. I've been all for getting rid of things, and I think that you guys are gonna see my bookshelves just like constantly evolve. They're gonna be different all the time. And then the last thing, which seems like it should be common knowledge, but it was something that I had to learn, is that it's okay to do other things. Obviously, I love reading, but I am also a multifaceted person. I have other interests, and I've learned that it's okay to explore those other interests and that I don't really need to be reading all of the time. During my break, there were some months where I read 12 books, there were some months where I read 4 books, and thankfully, there was never a time that I was feeling guilty about not having read more. Whenever I wasn't reading, it was because I was doing something else that I enjoyed or something else that I needed to do. It was nice to not feel bad about it. Obviously, I love reading. Reading is a part of my daily routine. I would read every single day if I could. I try to read every single day. I don't always have the time to read every single day, but I definitely try to like make the effort. In the past, I would always feel guilty if I was doing something else, because I would be like, you should be reading. Or like if I was watching a TV show or if I was playing a video game or something, I would be like, this is really fun, but also like think of the books that you're not getting done because you're doing these other things, and that's really unhealthy. There are so many joys in this world besides reading, and it's good to do all the things that you enjoy and not just like one thing all the time. Oh, so someone actually asked me on my first video back if I'm going to be talking about all of the TV shows and movie that I watch during the month too, because I used to do that in monthly wrap-ups, and I've decided that I am going to, but I'm going to do that in a separate video. Wrap-ups will just be books, and then I'm going to do a separate video where I'm going to talk about TV, movies, games, anime. I've been watching so much anime this month. Pretty much anything that hopefully eventually, if we get to like go outside again, I'll be able to talk about New York City things. I feel like it's important for me to include that on my channel because I want people to see that there's value in doing other things outside of reading, and that you don't need to feel pressured to read all the time. You don't need to feel the kind of pressures that I was feeling. I don't know what I'm going to call that video yet. I'm going to have to come up with a name for it to differentiate it. So basically, in conclusion, after removing the pressure of YouTube from my life and taking a step back, I was really able to determine like what works for me and what doesn't work for me as a reader and as a booktuber. And I was able to kind of determine what I want from my reading life, because I think that I wasn't really thinking about that for a while. I was just in the routine and in the habit of doing things, and I wasn't really thinking about why I was doing those things. It's really good to have like a clear vision or goal. I feel like I have that now. I really feel like I've been getting the most out of my reading life because I've been like listening more to my inner voice, especially when it comes to DNFing. And I really just hope that by sharing with you guys my personal booktuber experience, I can help anyone who is a booktube viewer, or you know, maybe other booktubers too, because I have a feeling that I'm not the only one who fell into maybe some unhealthy reading patterns or felt unnecessary guilt towards something that's supposed to be bringing you joy, and all of that was largely self-inflicted pressure too, so totally avoidable. Those are the things that I learned. I hope that you learned something too. Let me know how you approach your reading life, if you have a goal in your mind, and how you determine what you're going to read, how you determine what you're going to DNF. I find these things so interesting as I like continue to evolve and change my process. So that's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!